to make me say, I can't hear you. So good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Well, the book, this is the book, I finally have it done, that I thought it was really important to resurrect and reconstruct the story of the black loggers' families that came here in the 20s and really didn't leave till our family was the last family with kids in '58. And I thought, you know, if that story doesn't get reconstructed from our voices as the descendants of those loggers, it'll just be lost. I want to tell you that this is your history. I don't see anybody out in the audience that looks like me, but you live here in Wallowa County. And so this is part of your history that you should know, you should tell it, and you should be proud of it. I'm going to give you a spoiler alert because the subtext of this talk, of course, is race relations and how did our family make it up here as a black family in Wallowa County. And I'll do a spoiler alert that we did okay. And we did okay because while there was racism, and I'll talk about that some, that there were really a lot of good people. And people who judged people, regardless of race, origin, nationality, religion, what have you, based on character. And I'll discuss that in more detail when I get to the end. But let me talk about how we got here first. And maybe you know that because you have the Maxville History Center here. But in 1923, the Bowman Hicks Lumber Company bought out the Nibley Manaw and moved up here to cut some of this beautiful timber. Now, one of the characteristics of logging companies back then was that, you know, they cut everything wherever they were, like scorched earth, and then they would literally pick up the whole community and move them. My parents actually worked in McNairy, Arizona, that was named Cooley, Arizona before they got there, but the company that they had worked for, the Katy Lumber Company, had cut out in McNairy, Louisiana, so they picked up everything, including 400 African Americans and everybody else, the skidder, the whole operation, moved it to Cooley and renamed it McNairy. So that's why my brother was born in McNairy, Arizona. But getting back to Wallowa County. So in 1923, Bowman Hicks bought out this company and all of their holdings and picked up a couple of other small companies. And they had to get a workforce. And actually the timber industry for that period was waning a little bit, so they had to move quickly and get timber out quickly. So what he did is let me think. When he looked at the terrain, he faced what he considered two threats to bring in black workers, because he was going to bring in workers that he knew. The first threat was that there was a very active Ku Klux Klan up here in Wallowa and Union County. Matter of fact, there was the Wallowa County Ku Klux Klan chapter that had been formed, I think, around 1921. And then the other threat were the Wobblies. Who knows about the Wobblies? Well, back then, they were the international workers of the world, and they were very progressive union workers. And they were taking on what they called the timber barons throughout the Northwest. Well, if you owned a company, the last thing you wanted to do was deal with Wobblies. And one of the tenets of the Wobblies was they lectured to white workers about how they had to form solidarity with black workers. They did that even in the South. So that wasn't going to work. So Bowman Hicks hired this guy. His name was Henry Newton Ashby. All the workers called him Old Man Ashby, to set up the operation here. So they reached back to where they knew workers, to Louisiana and Arkansas, and brought them out, the black workers, as part of the workforce. When the black workers got to LeGrand by train, Ashby met them at the train station with a shotgun and armed guards, because he was afraid that, one, they might be let by the Ku Klux Klan, or, given the time, Ku Klux Klan members who were members of a local union that wasn't the Wobblies, that would cause harm. So they met them there, they spent the night, and then they brought them up to Maxville, and that's how the first workers got here. Well, now workers didn't just come by themselves, they had families, right? So even though the men came first and got settled in the camp, they then sent back and got their wives and children. Now let me tell you about the camp. It was called Maxville. And it was a cookie cutter company town. If you look at the map of the Bowman Hicks town in Loring, Louisiana, where they came from, and then you look at a map of Maxville, they're identical. The editor of the Wallowa Sun at the time, or maybe it was a chieftain, I don't remember. But anyway, his name was Gwynn Coffin. And he wrote this really funny kind of editorial about driving up to look at Maxville and kind of teasing about how it was constructed as a southern town. So in the middle of it, there was this big area where in the south, when it gets really hot and sticky and humid, that you would get nice breezes that come through. Well, he mocked about wait until they see what comes through here in the wintertime, when this nice open space is full up to the eaves with snow. So he wrote that editorial and came on back down. Now he didn't mention the social organization of the town, but I'll tell you, because it was a company town from the south, it was segregated. And it was segregated with blacks living in one area